Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Any mentions of rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean that the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal or tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. All rights reserved.
Everybody's more productive when you have a checklist. Your retirement checklist coming up.
And now, how to retire with Fuchs Financial.
The main thing for the majority of the listeners out there who are approaching retirement is I don't want to be surprised.
Helping you build, preserve, and manage your wealth.
You got Roth IRAs, you have individual accounts, and finding the right taxable strategy, that's going to be huge for you.
Welcome in to How to Retire with Ben Fuchs.
You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Great words of wisdom from philosopher and poet Ice Cube. That's how we start the show today. I'm Gary Nolan, your consumer advocate. With me is Ben Fuchs. Ben is here to help you take charge of your money. Ben is a certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor professional, and fiduciary with over 20 years experience in the business. And, of course, he is with Fuchs Financial. You know, before we get started, before we get rolling, let me give you the phone number again on Ben's calendar. Maybe you have a question or two during the show, or you want to get that comprehensive plan, the How to Retire Blueprint. That's what we call it. That number is 800-380-8985. How do you like that quote?
I think there's nothing that aligns more directly with financial planning than NWA and Ice Cube.
Yeah.
But which isn't to say I'm not a fan. I am, in fact, a fan. But I was not quite expecting that one at the beginning. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. You know, we aim to please, and we aim to, shock radio from time to time. So let's get going.
That's what financial planning is all about. Shock radio.
Shock talk. Shock jocks here. Okay, as we head down the road to retirement, it's important to consider the many components of your plan, because what might feel like a small piece of the puzzle can actually make or break the quality of your financial future. So we got this checklist we're going to do today covering all kinds of things. We want you to retire with confidence and leave no doubt in your financial plan. I'll start with the first one. We could spend a whole segment on this because it is so important. You got to have it in writing, Ben. You need that written plan.
Yeah, so let's analyze this real quick. So I can tell you that I've met with tons of people. I mean, thousands. I have met with over 1,000 people, probably a few thousand people as they're approaching retirement. I've been doing nothing but this for over a decade.
Wow.
And, it's a little crazy. People come in, and one of the biggest complaints that they have is they say, hey, my advisor thinks that I'll be fine. I just want a second opinion. So, okay, well, what do you have there, right? What kind of proof do you have that you're going to be okay? How do they quantify this okay, I'm putting in quotation marks, this okay that they have?
Right.
So having a written plan will show you a few important things. One, it'll talk about the type of rate of return that you'll need to be able to bridge that gap between what you're going to get from your Social Security or your pension and what you need to generate from your investments. So we need to figure out what kind of rate of return that is. And then on top of that, it's, okay, does that include inflation? We need to know that, we know that things are going to go up, but we need to show in our plan that you can withstand the consistent compounding effect of inflation. And then on top of that, let's not forget that the market's not just going to go up every year, that we're going to have years where it goes up 5, 6, 10, 20%, and times when it does the opposite. And so, again, showing how you can withstand all those pieces gives peace of mind and helps my retirees be comfortable entering retirement.
Mm-hmm. I heard a story once. A client came in, and it was the husband and wife, and the advisor asked them about the written plan, and he points to his forehead. He goes, "It's all up here." No.
And then he got a concussion.
Yes, exactly. That's why I've slammed him, because it could happen. But yeah, you definitely need that written plan. So let's do that. Let's get started. 800-380-8985. Get the How to Retire Blueprint. The show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. I'm Gary Nolan, your consumer advocate. 800-380-8985. What are you waiting for? I'll get you the next one, Ben. You can roll through these after that. Make a budget spending plan. We don't like the B word, but spending plan will do, so we like that.
Well, I think that it's important that I sound like a broken record. So I'm going to continue to repeat myself. But let's look at the 3 things that are really important that need to be known as you enter retirement. Number 1, what do you have? That includes 401k, 403b, IRA, 457, what you're going to get from Social Security or pension, right? We need to know what you have. Number 2, how much are you earning? And number 3, what are you spending? People say, hey, I've got $2 million. Is that enough? Maybe.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're spending. If you're spending, $10,000, $15,000 a month, you'll probably be fine. If you are spending $40,000 a month, no, that is not going to get it done. So what we need to figure out is, again, what do you want to spend in retirement? And let's take into account, we want you to be comfortable. We want you going on vacation. We want you to enjoy your life and visit the children and grandkids or tour. And if you don't have them, that's okay. You're probably doing better off anyway. But I love my kids. Disclaimer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love my grandchildren too. Disclaimer.
Yeah, let it be known.
Okay.
But we need to know those numbers so that we can account for them, so that we can make a plan for them, so that we can have what your normal income is, and then on top of that, what your normal, what our safety net is. But I don't necessarily like to say the word budget. That's probably one of my least favorite words, especially for retirees. Yeah. But having a good idea of what you're spending is incredibly important.
Yeah. You must have clients that have that wide range, like they spend $10,000 a month, or I get by on $5,000 a month, and clients will say, nope, I need $80,000 a month to live on. Am I right?
I promise you. And every single, so it's tough. There are a lot of ones they'll come in and they'll say, look, I don't spend a lot. I'm pretty frugal. I'm not, okay, great. But what does that mean? Because you can be relatively frugal and not go out to eat a lot and not do a lot of things. But in Connecticut, you have a decent sized house. You're paying a fair amount in taxes and electricity and all of the other things that just go along with being a homeowner. So, which isn't to say to sell your home. I'm not advocating for that either. But we know that there are just built-in costs that we have. So we really need to understand what it is that we want out of retirement and make sure that we can afford that. Because there's no point in retiring early if you're going to be less happy in retirement.
Yeah, I always hear these statistics say, I want to be 75-80% of my income in retirement as I did during my working years. Who wants to make less? Who wants to live on less? Am I right? You don't want to do that.
Couldn't agree with you more. At the same time, you don't always need as much, because people think about, I make this now, I need to make this in retirement. Well, you're not contributing to your 401k, you're not paying FICA taxes, you're not, there are certain things. But in terms of your spending, I don't want to spend less, I want to spend more in retirement. I'm going to have more time, I want to do more things.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to walk around the West Farms Mall 8 hours a day.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Right around the corner from our West Hartford office, by the way.
I know. That's why I mentioned that. I'd like to say hello to all the seniors walking, getting their steps in this morning,
I think we just said hi to my aunt and uncle, but we'll take it. Yeah, let's go for it.
We'll definitely take it. So, the show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. Want you to get the How to Retire Blueprint. Here's that phone number again, 800-380-8985. What are you waiting for? Get that customized plan, no cost or no obligation. Ben will put it all together for you. Or maybe you have a question or two throughout the show that something comes up and, maybe we didn't dive in as deep as we'd like to because of time constraints. 800-380-8985. And the next point I want to make, Ben, and I'm sure you want to make too, is income. And that's where it all begins. When you put a plan together, you have to start on the income side, not on the investment side. Am I right?
Yeah, without a question. I think the goal for us is to figure out what is the problem that we need to solve. And so typically that is, paycheck. The biggest concern about people retiring from work is no longer getting that paycheck from their employer. So now you have to pay yourself. And how do we do that in a consistent and predictable way where we can maintain our principal if we want to leave money behind, where, we can look at options that will generate, predictable income every month like clockwork, so that you don't feel like you have the anxiety that you might if you're not getting, their paycheck. So solving for income, I think, is one of the main things that we do here at Fuchs Financial. And part of our goal, when we're taking a little bit of risk here, when we're not putting everything completely and totally safe, but we're looking to mitigate, the overall market crashes, we look to net our clients about 8%. That is our goal. That is our expectation. That's not a promise. Don't get me sued by the SEC. But no. That is what we expect to do for our clients. And we have some very specific ways of generating that. So when we look at that and we say, okay, if somebody has a portfolio of $1 million, and no, you don't have to have $1 million to give us a call, but for the sake of the example, let's say that you do, we might take half of that and put it in what we look at as an income-generating portfolio that can get you 8%. So that $500,000 is now generating $40,000. That's typically what you might need to fill the gap between Social Security and what you want to spend. So we can generate that and maintain your principal. And then we can use other parts of that other money, some for a safety net, some for long-term growth, because we know if we need $40,000 now, it's a safe bet that we're going to need more 2-3 years from now. So solving for income, having a plan for income is really important. And I think what differentiates a lot of advisors out there is how they do it. Do they just want to throw you into an annuity and call it a day? Or do they want to really create a plan that's going to help you maintain throughout your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. A couple of minutes left, Ben, but we're going to continue the checklist into segment 2. So let's tackle the next one, and then we'll continue along segment 2 here too. Healthcare. We could spend a whole show on that, for goodness' sake.
Easily. And so one of the things that we did last year was that we hired a dedicated retirement health benefits analyst into our office, and I can tell you, respectfully, as a business owner, and I'll put that hat on, that is not what I would call a moneymaker for our office, but it is something that solves a lot of problems for our clients, because people need to understand the different ins and outs of Medicare. And if you have a whole bunch of different medications, we're going to figure out the plan that works best for that scenario. And then also understanding how you can get out of plans if it makes sense, when you can do it. Having somebody that is dedicated to doing that is extremely important. And then having us work in tandem. Okay, what is the maximum out of pocket that you would have to pay in some kind of emergency? Those are the plans that we want to help figure out for you and put together. And when I say we, I use that very loosely, because I am not the one doing that, but our team is able to help you there. And so taking care of healthcare, solving that risk, solving that concern is important, especially if you're going to be retiring before 65, because again, we have a gap of healthcare that we want to cover, and we don't want to hinder anybody being able to retire early.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yep.
That's why we do our retirement blueprint, right? And it's not Fuchs Financial's retirement blueprint; it's our client's blueprint. And everybody has a different blueprint, and that's important because we need to figure out how we can build the house in their retirement, how we can create the right foundation for them, how we can build the walls and make sure that they're comfortable and peaceful and have a roof over their head that doesn't leak. We don't want to have to worry about the market crashing and you being scared about how you're going to pay your bills. We want to take that stress off your shoulders. Let us take care of that. Let us help you with that. But we can't do that unless you pick up the phone and give us a call.
All right. This sure is your chance to benefit from the How to Retire Blueprint. Call right now. We still have a limited number of availabilities on our calendar this week. And remember, the consultation is offered at no cost or no obligation. So what are you waiting for? Folks at Fuchs Financial are standing by, ready for your phone call. Get on the calendar, 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985. We usually get a lot of calls during the show, and so you really want to call right now before those slots fill up. All right, one more time before we go to break, 800-380-8985. All right, we'll take a short break. Be back with more of Ben and How to Retire in just a moment. What's up next, sir?
We round out our checklist of items to consider on your road to retirement, along with tips and strategies to help you streamline the planning process. Right after this.
He's letting the clock run out on his Social Security to age 70 for maximum benefits. And here comes the Roth conversion. He's locked in for income for life. He's got some outstanding coaching with that annuity plan. He's created his own pension as well, and it looks like he's going to go all the way.
Play your best retirement game. Call Ben Fuchs at Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985.
Welcome back to the show. This is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. Ben is here to help you take charge of your money. Ben has helped, we say hundreds, but he said thousands, so I'm going to go with thousands. Ben has helped thousands of folks plan for their retirement years. Ben is a certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor, professional, and fiduciary. He's got over 20 years in the business. Of course, he is with Fuchs Financial. Thousands. We can agree that we bumped that up to thousands now?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Okay.
I've met with over 1,000 people. I don't have over 1,000 individual clients, but I've worked for other companies, but I definitely have met with thousands of people and created over thousands of plans for people to help them retire. And, one of the things that we distinguish when we create a how to retire blueprint is that we don't have a problem with somebody coming in and not becoming a client. We still want to be able to help them and get them on the right road. And we take them on as clients when we feel like it'll benefit both of us.
Yeah, and that's, again, Ben, we talk about that you're independent, and that's part of your fiduciary responsibilities. And, if they can become clients, that's wonderful. If not, we'll send you on your way and wish you lots of luck. All right, so we're going through the checklist again, and let's pick up where we left off. This is a big one. Tax planning. Explain that for our listeners, Ben.
Oh, sure. I'll just, let me just take 1 minute and we'll explain all of tax planning. No problem. Gary, thank you for the layup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How many pages in that tax code book?
Yeah. No, I mean, the code is just a leaflet that we all have to worry about. And it's nice because, when somebody described it as like, it's a test that you take, but somebody else already knows the answer. So you're putting them in and then they just correct you and get mad at you for doing it wrong afterwards.
Yeah.
But, when we talk about tax planning, that's not, doing your taxes. That's making sure that your income is as low as possible and the right combination of income. What do you mean the right combination of income? Great question, Gary. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yep.
When people retire, they typically have a number of different options and sources of income. They have Social Security,
sure, yep.
pension.
Yep.
They have things called dividends and capital gains for stocks and mutual funds outside of the IRAs. They have RMDs and withdrawals from their IRA. And a lot of these things are taxed differently. And depending upon the combination of that income, you could either be paying almost nothing in taxes or what we would consider to be too much. And for us, it's important to look at the whole picture. Let's look at the tax return. Let's see where your income is coming from and see what we can do to mitigate, prevent, change. There are certain things that you can do. There's a thing called a qualified charitable distribution. And so what that means is that you take money directly from your IRA if you're over 70 and a half, and instead of having it go to you, you send it directly to a charity. Well, so, I'm not that charitably inclined. Well, I don't care. There are certain scenarios where the next $1,000 that you take out of your IRA, you're actually taxed over 40% on that next $1,000. And you say, well, Ben, that doesn't make sense. There is no 40% tax bracket. You're right. Thank you for bringing that up. However, that $1,000 of IRA money could cause Social Security that was not being taxed previously to now be taxable. Mm-hmm. It could also cause capital gains and dividends that were not previously taxed to be taxable. So at no point are you in a 40% bracket that does not currently exist, but that $1,000 causes over 40% of that money to then become taxable.
Yeah, sounds like an avalanche.
You could call it an avalanche. You could call it avalanche is a great term. We'll take it. Yeah, but the bottom line is you don't know about these things unless you have somebody quantifying these things, looking at numbers. Here's what the software says. Let's take a look at this ahead of time so that we can prevent it, so that we know what we're doing and make sure that we're taking the money from the right places at the right time.
Yeah, and to do a comprehensive plan, to get that how to retire blueprint, tax planning has to be a part of it, and a vital part of it. You just heard Ben talk about it. We're going to go on to talk about asset inventory, and there's a lot to this, Ben.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways to look at what you call asset inventory. But what I like to think about it is, do you have the right investment in the right spot? So do you remember earlier when I said that we look to generate about 8% a year in interest for our clients if we're doing what we'd call the income style portfolio? So this is incredibly important. If I have somebody that's still working and they have a trust, and that $500,000 that I was talking about that's getting them $40,000 a year is invested in that trust, they're paying taxes on that extra $40,000 a year of interest. Well, what if I don't take it out of the trust? Don't care. You still pay taxes on it, right? Just like you pay taxes on the interest that you made on the CD. You didn't take that out. You still had to pay taxes on it. Same concept. So when we talk about allocation, where is that money invested? The goal is to have that money invested inside of an IRA. because you're not taxed on that money until you take it out. And if you're still working, you don't need it. We're not going to take it out, but we can still generate that 8%. So you can see how your paycheck will come to you when you are retired. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive into the difference of risk tolerance and risk exposure. Let's explain that to our listeners, Ben.
Yeah, so risk tolerance means what are you actually comfortable with, right? I think your tolerance is saying, hey, the market goes down by 30, I can't handle that. I cannot tolerate that type of risk. And versus exposure, some people might say, hey, I want to be like 2022. A lot of people were almost all in bonds in 2022, and so they thought that they were, less exposed. However, a lot of these bond funds went down by 10%, 15, 17. I saw a couple go down by more than 30. So you see that even though they think that their tolerance is low, even though they've explained that their tolerance is low, that doesn't mean that they're not more exposed than they expect to be. And I think it's important to look at that. There are a lot of programs that we use in our own firm that I strongly disagree with. But because they can only use backdated information. They can only say this is what happened in 2001 or 2008. Gotcha. Here's what happened in the past. But they can't predict the future, and that's fair complaint because I don't know anything that can accurately, predictably, consistently predict the future, except me, of course. No, let me take that back. That was a joke.
There's the buzzer.
Thank you. I'll take it. But we have to understand what can happen in the future. And we have to understand the relationship between interest rates and bonds and long-term versus short-term, and how you have a really, really long-term bond at 2% and then interest rates go up to 5%. Nobody wants that bond. And if you want to keep it, you're going to have to hold on to it for 9 years at less than half of what everybody else in the market is getting to get your money back.
Right.
In a lot of cases, that's not worth it. And that's why you lost so much money. Let's not put yourself in that position. So there's risk tolerance is what you can comfortably handle, and then exposure is what you actually are there. So part of what our job is to figure out, one, what you're actually comfortable with, and two, to show you how exposed you actually are. And that's something that we do when you come in for an appointment with us.
The show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. I'm Gary Nolan, your consumer advocate. Let's get you that phone number. Get yourself all set up with the How to Retire Blueprint. 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985. Folks at Fuchs Financial are standing by. Ben, I'm looking at the show notes here. You're supposed to use me as an example for the rule of 100.
No. So first of all, you know that I don't care about those show notes. I just say whatever's on my mind. 1, 2, I don't like the rule of 100, so we're going to gloss right over that. And plus, we don't need to tell people that you're actually only 35, even though you pretend to be a little bit older.
Exactly. Well, I was going to use 49 as an example. What's really sad? It's sad when you want to be 49. That's kind of sad. But whatever.
I want to be 39. Does that count? I can't do that anymore. So,
okay. Well, let's talk about another pleasant subject, Social Security.
Social Security. All right. This is one of the most, I think, in some ways overanalyzed, in some ways underanalyzed. A lot of people say they took away a lot of the rules, a lot of the different mechanisms that you could have used to try and be tricky and get more out of Social Security. At the same time, understanding how Social Security is taxed is an underrated part of the retirement plan. And people don't understand that the less other income that you have, the less your Social Security is taxed. So it's important now because, 3, 4, 5 years ago, before you had all these big increases in Social Security, before they had all those inflation adjustments, Social Security wouldn't pay that much. But if you had two people that were in their late 60s, maybe even 70, taking Social Security, you could have both of them getting $4,500 a month, $9,000 a year, and have almost none of that be taxed at all. Not federally, not in the state of Connecticut. So we look at that and we say, depending on your other income, Social Security could be a huge boon. But when you have required distributions, when you're forced to take other money out, when you're forced to pull other things, when you have a lot of interest just generating in the CDs instead of more efficient vehicles, that's when you could really get, I would say, affected by taxes. So it's our job as financial planners, as fiduciaries, as a certified financial planner professional, certified private wealth advisor professional, whatever other, things that you want to put after our names, to make sure that you're keeping the majority of your money and doing that in a way where we can control that as much as we possibly can.
Right. So if you let's say you're at full retirement age and you're working full time, and there's got to be some weird calculation that they do, right, to see how much you're going to be taxed. How does that work without getting into the weeds, Ben?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's programs that we use, and we'll show you how much you'll actually keep and how much of your Social Security is taxed. A lot of people say, "Hey, I'm working full time. I want to take Social Security." Okay, great, but how much of that are you going to take home? Versus if you retire a year or two later and you wait for another year or two, so you get another 8% compounded or twice. Yep. Mm-hmm. What is the overall impact on what you can take home and what you can have to spend versus, having a little bit of extra income now? People say, well, if I die early, okay, but if you die early, you don't care. I think what's worse is the anxiety of feeling like you're going to run out. Mm-hmm. That is what I would like to prevent. So, right. There are lots of different calculations, lots of different formulas, but the ultimate goal is to figure out what is going to keep you comfortable the longest. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we try to help figure out. But look, that's why we do the How to Retire Blueprint. That's the whole point. We come in and we help you figure out when you should take Social Security. We figure out the right types of investments that, one, you're comfortable with, and two, you need to generate the income that you have for retirement. And then three, we want to make sure that we're doing that in the most tax efficient way possible. And I think something that we might talk about next be legacy planning, wills, trusts, etc. We'll get into that in the next segment, but that's something that we help our clients with also. So it's important that we bring these things together all in one blueprint so that you can have it all in one place. And by the way, healthcare. So those 5 things really to work together to create a great retirement plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to call an audible, you might say, the football analogy, and we're going to continue along with segment 2 with legacy planning, wills and trusts, and long-term care and life insurance, and why you should work with a professional. We'll do that coming up. I want you to get the How to Retire Blueprint call right now. We still have a limited number of availabilities on our calendar this week, and the consultation is offered at no cost or no obligation. Here's that number, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. Folks at Fuchs Financial are standing by. You deserve a more confident plan to retire. You want to be stress-free. You want peace of mind when you move on down the road to retirement. All right, Ben, you made an executive decision. I love it. We're going to continue along with the checklist, right? Want to do that?
Yeah, we'll finish up the checklist when we come back right after this.
We believe in better. A better way to invest. A better way to serve you. And a better result. We can help you determine how much risk you're taking. Red flags that could be potential problems for you. How much you are paying in fees or commissions, potential tax liability, or even how to address Social Security. Call Ben Fuchs at Fuchs Financial, proudly serving all of Connecticut. Call today, 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985.
Welcome back to the show. This is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. I'm your consumer advocate, Gary Nolan. Ben is back with us to help you take charge of your money. And Ben mentioned this, how important it is. Ben is a certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor, professional, and fiduciary with over 20 years experience in the business. I want you to get the How to Retire Blueprint. Let's do it right now. Let's get that phone number out there for you. 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985. Do it right now while you're thinking about it. We have a limited availability, and those slots do fill up kind of quickly. All right, continuing along with our checklist, Ben. Let's see, we got legacy planning, wills, and trust. You can have at it. This is something that's vitally important.
It's incredibly important, and it's often neglected. And to be fair, it's not something that we cover in typically the first or second appointment someone will have with us. Now, questions that I get asked often. Hey, Ben, do you guys at Fuchs Financial have an attorney that you use? Can you draw up a will for us? Can you do our trusts? And to that I say, absolutely not. And don't get me wrong, I've thought about it. I've thought about having an attorney on staff, but as I'm not an attorney myself, if they were to make a mistake, I have no idea how to rectify that. But more important, and I think more vital, is that you need different attorneys for different types of trusts. What do you mean by that? Great question, Gary. Thank you so much for asking.
I was about to, yeah.
I figured. I'm here for you. But so, most attorneys, general real estate attorneys or whatever, they can do a standard will for you. Those are not what I would consider to be in the realm of incredibly difficult, right? And within that, you want to make sure that you have the proper powers of attorney. When I came up learning this stuff for the CFP, they called it springing powers of attorney. They spring into action when you need them. If that is medical directives, if that's to pay the financial bills, you need to have somebody that can do that stuff if you're incapacitated for a period of time. You don't want your bills to go unpaid. So having that done, is very, very important. So that's the basics, and everybody should have a will. That's that's just my belief. Everybody should have a will. Just make it clean, great. But what a will does is it sends everything out during probate. So you can't really control money from the grave. So let's say that. Well, I've got 3 children. I'll use them as an example. Let's say that hypothetically, my oldest was married, and let's say that I did not like her husband very much. And let's say,
it could happen. Yeah,
I know it's a crazy out there scenario that nobody's ever had to deal with. So
no, never.
I just try to throw it out there. But let's say that this was the scenario. So if I don't want her husband to get all of my money when we die, I might set something up where, they only get 4 or 5% of what's in the trust every year. And after 10 years or after 15 years, they can get the bulk of it, right? They can get the rest of it. Something like that might be considered a living trust. It happens, I still have control over that trust. She gets divorced, I can change the rules of it. All of a sudden, I like the guy. Things can change. Great, but it's called a living trust. And, also when people have property in 2 different states, if I've got, a house in Connecticut and a house in Florida, you can put both of those and make the trust the owner of that property. That way they don't have to go to probate in another state. That might be helpful. Or not. And anybody that had to deal with somebody dying during COVID understands how awful that probate process was. So trust will help you avoid probate, but you have to do it right. That has to be done by the right types of attorneys. So that's important.
I mean, it's not the most pleasant subject to talk about, but here's the thing, Ben, and I think you mentioned this, but you don't need to be a millionaire to have a will, an estate plan. It doesn't matter. I mean, with me, who's going to get the dogs? I mean, come on,
right?
Like that.
When we first got our will done, it was who's going to take care of the kids when we die. I could just imagine my poor cousins having to take in 3 more. You won the lottery. Congratulations. You get our kids.
Just we get the kids.
Right. So let's keep going. So we talked about wills. We talked about living trusts. There's a thing called an irrevocable trust that basically makes you no longer the owner of your property. So what happens in an irrevocable trust is that you no longer own, like if you're putting your house into an irrevocable trust and it's been there for 5 years, that entity now owns the house, which means that if you now want to go sell your house years later, you're going to jump through some major hoops to have to make that happen. But if you go into a nursing home, they can't, and you run out of money and you end up on Medicaid, they can't take the house. Because as long as it's done correctly in a certain 5 years, but again, you need different attorneys for that. And then there are other things. Special needs trusts. If you have children that have special needs and would be on state aid if they received any money or can't have over a certain amount of money in their bank account, you need a different type of attorney than the one that does the other 2. And again, there are more. So there's charitable remainder trusts. It's if you want to give money to a charitable organization, you can do that through a trust. You can get a tax deduction in the year that you make that trust, and then you get paid out from that. A charitable remainder annuity trust or unit trust. Let's not get too fancy, but again, you need different attorneys for basically 3 out of those 4 pieces. Wow. So we don't want to have one in office because it doesn't make sense for us to pay an attorney that might not be able to help you. And also, we want you to go to who you want. I think that's important. But having the options, that's important. And for us, it's important to steer you in the right direction based on what your concerns are, based on what's going on with you and your family and where you want your money to go when you're no longer here.
Yeah, what you've just explained and described, Ben, is something I know I don't know anything about, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't know anything about. And to me, it appears to be a very complicated thing that, you definitely need help, and that's why you need to go see Ben. He'll answer all those questions for you, and you're also going to get the How to Retire Blueprint when you see him. 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. The show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs, going through the checklist here. Let's see. Let's talk about the next one. Again, we could probably spend a whole segment on this one, too. Long-term care and life insurance. Big topic here.
Yeah, big topic here. So I think one of the biggest concerns that people have is, what happens if I need long-term care? And so statistics will show us that 70%, I've seen 80% there's a 70 or 80% chance that one partner in a couple will at some point need some form of long-term care. And most of the time, if possible, that is going to be in the home because, 1, that's less expensive, typically, and 2, it's more comfortable. People don't want to have to move out of their home. So we see these statistics, we understand them, but how we plan for them is somewhat unique. Part of the problem is that if you are spending $8, $9, $10,000 a year on the cost of insurance for something that you may not need. It's very difficult to say, I'm going to do this, decrease my quality of life while I'm better able to enjoy it in my 50s and my 60s and my 70s for a time when, maybe I won't. But your goals have to be there. If you want long-term care insurance, for me, and look, first of all, I'm a fiduciary. I'm going to do whatever you want. My advice will be that you get it if one of your most important goals is to leave a legacy. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
Because if you want to leave a legacy, we want to make sure that you're not able to have your assets run down. We want to protect those with insurance. That's what we're insuring. So that's the benefit of that long-term care insurance. But if you don't care about leaving money behind to the next generation, or that's not as big of a deal, or maybe you can use other things like estate planning, like we talked about earlier, to protect some of the assets. Maybe we don't want to spend so much money every single year. If we're paying $10,000 a year for 30 years for long-term care insurance, and then we don't need it, which, by the way, is the goal. We don't want it. But either way, you spent $300,000 over the course of time on something that you're not going to use. So let's look at what we can do based on your scenario, based on what's going to make you most comfortable. We're here to give you options and then let you make the decisions. Mm-hmm. Life insurance was the other part of that. We talked about long-term care and life insurance. So you can combine the two. You can get certain policies where you can have life insurance with a long-term care rider on it. Now, again, this is a scenario where you want to leave a legacy. That's when it is most important in my mind. But I have people that just look at life insurance as a retirement vehicle. And for the majority of time when we first meet with somebody, typically they're in their 50s and 60s. And that's usually when people come to see us. And that's usually not the time when we're really big on buying a whole bunch of life insurance. Usually you've saved enough to where you don't need that life insurance anymore. Life insurance is used to cover a loss of income. Right. That's what it, so for us, 60 years old, we don't need to get a whole bunch of life insurance. One, it's way more expensive than it was 20, 30 years ago. Sure. And two, what for? What are we trying to accomplish here? So again, let's look at the goals. But if we want to generate tax-free income, like I have different times when I've got on my soapbox and said, this is not great. Don't
do this.
But there are times when it's appropriate. Like if you're in your 20s and 30s and you've been a really good saver and you max out the 401k and you got other things and you've got your safety net and you basically have more income that you want to put aside and you don't want to spend, life insurance might be a decent vehicle for you to use as a different type of risk, as a different style of investment. I don't expect you to get a higher overall rate of return on life insurance, but it can provide some different options for you. So again, one of those things to consider along with the plan. But ultimately, that's the reason why we have a How to Retire Blueprint. So let's look at 5 things that are critically important, right? Number 1, the investments that you have in retirement. Number 2, the taxes. Number 3, the healthcare. Number 4, the estate planning. And number 5, income, paycheck, right? We need those 5 things for a very comfortable retirement. Our job is to make sure that each one of our clients has each one of those boxes checked. Are we minimizing taxes? Are we maximizing the income? Are we creating a plan for a legacy? Are we doing the things that we need to do for them to be comfortable and have a long-lasting retirement? And that's why people come in, so that they don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. I would say that if I was at home before I learned all the stuff and I was listening to Gary and I talk, I might have just a little bit of anxiety because I might know about maybe 1/10 of what you're saying.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is normal. But our goal is to say, you don't have to know. That's what we're here for. I don't have to learn all of the law if I need to talk to a lawyer. That's why I have a lawyer. I don't need to go to medical school if I have a problem. That's why I have a doctor. You don't need to become a financial planner to retire. That's why you have us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I didn't go to a YouTube video to have surgery on my knee, and I went to a surgeon. That's exactly right. And the first step is to sit down with Ben. It's something we've been talking about resonates with you. You feel need to get the second opinion, want to make sure your plan is really aligned with your goals. Very important risk tolerance we've been talking about too. Pick up the phone, get the How to Retire Blueprint. Here's that number, 800-380-8985. Folks at Fuchs Financial are standing by ready for your phone call, 800-380-8985. Wow, going through this checklist checklist reminds me of how many moving parts and how many things that can go wrong in your retirement if you're not doing it right with an independent fiduciary like Ben. One more time on the phone number before we go to break, 800-380-8985. Continue along with How to Retire with Ben Fuchs in just a moment. Well, what's up next, sir?
You've got questions, we've got answers. Ask the Advisor is coming up next.
Do you ever feel like you're fighting for financial knowledge? Don't let bad advice be a punch in the gut to your retirement. Take advantage of a complimentary, no-cost, no-obligation consultation with a local, trusted financial coach.
Call Ben Fuchs and the team at Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985. That's 800-380-8985.
Welcome back to the show. This is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. I'm your consumer advocate, Gary Nolan. Ben is with us to help you take charge of your money. Ben is a certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor, professional, and fiduciary. Over 20 years experience in the business. And, of course, he is with Fuchs Financial. I want you to get the How to Retire blueprint. So let's right at the top of the segment here, give you that phone number. Get on the calendar. Those slots do fill up quickly during the show. 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985. Maybe you have a question about some of the things we've been talking about during the show today. Ben and his team will be happy to answer your questions as well. 800-380-8985. I'll talk about questions, these that came into us, and here we go. Paul in Portland. I've been a firefighter since I was 19. I retire next year at the age of 49. At this young age, short of getting another job, how can I supplement my pension? Well, good for you. Worked for 30 years, and now he's on the road to retirement at 49. That's pretty amazing.
Must be nice, Paul. Anyway,
Must be nice, Paul. I know.
That's great. And thank you, by the way, because I don't want to jump into a fire, and I'm glad that you will do it.
Yeah,
and
thank
I'm
goodness.
grateful, and you deserve it. We're grateful.
Absolutely.
But you have a couple things. So typically, police officers, firefighters, people that tend to retire earlier than what you would call the average, they have something called a 457. And that's different from a 401k and a 403b. 457s actually allow you to take money out of your account at 50 without penalty, as opposed to some of the other ones where you have to wait until 59 and a half. This is important because at 49, you're right there. So, one, you can generate some income from the 457. However, a lot of the investments that are in these retirement accounts, and the 401ks, 403bs, 457s, are not really conducive to generating a consistent monthly income. So what we typically do as advisors at Fuchs Financial is move it from those retirement accounts that you have, from the employer accounts or town or state accounts, and move them into your own individual retirement account. We do that so that we can have a wider array of options for you to generate your income. Now, once we've moved it from your 457 into the IRA, there would typically be a penalty for taking that money out, right? Okay. Now, how do we avoid that? Great question. Thank you so much for asking. There is a funky rule called a 72T. T as in time. So, or SEPP, separate equal periodic payments. That is a way for us to generate a consistent monthly income every single month without a penalty for early withdrawal from the IRA. And a case like yours, where you have so much time that you want to begin taking money out, that's what we would do. Now, there are some considerations. One, it is a process. You have to find a very good accountant to help you with that. You need somebody that knows their stuff, that has done this before. That's important. Obviously, we'll work with you on that. And number two, once you begin those monthly payments, they cannot stop until either 5 years has gone by or until you are 59 and a half, whichever is later. So in your case, once you begin taking those payments, you have to take them until you're 59 and a half, which you may not want to do right away because maybe you do want a job. I would recommend that at 49, retiring, we don't start that process right away. We rely on the 457 for a year or two of supplementing income, and we might have to get a lower overall rate of return on some of that money by putting some of that in stable value funds for the time being. Because you get bored at 52 and want to go back to work, and then you still have all this other income coming in, that might cause you a taxable issue.
Right.
So I think we come in, we create a plan, we have some discussions on what your goals are, what you want to accomplish. Yes, there are things that we can do, maybe you don't want to do them, but you want to know that the options are out there. So I would say if that's you or you're in a scenario similar to that, give us a call. Let's figure out how we can help.
Yeah, does the 457 have limited options like a 401k as opposed to an IRA, which has thousands of options, Ben?
Yeah, the same thing. So 457, let's say that it has 20 options. 10 of them are going to be these target retirement date funds.
Yes,
those are the ones
exactly.
that say, TRD 2025, 2030, 2035.
Yep.
Right. So, and then the rest will be, large cap, mid cap, small cap.
Sure.
International real estate stable value fund.
Right,
That's usually some combination of those.
Yeah.
And I know that because I said I've met with thousands of people over the years, and I've seen tons of these. So, those aren't great for monthly income. That's why we changed it.
And, a lot of folks at that age, if they're lucky enough to retire, want to start a business. They've saved enough money and jump into starting a business. Maybe they had a passion. My brother-in-law is a great chef and a great cook, and he worked for Toyota for many, many years, and now he has a food truck. That's his passion. So, follow your dreams, follow your passion, too. The show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. I'm Gary Nolan, your consumer advocate. 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. Get the How to Retire blueprint. Let's move on to Sharon in Simsbury. I have a meeting scheduled next week. I want to see if it'd be okay to bring my 18-year-old son along, who's heading to college in a few months. Thanks, and I appreciate what you do. I guess you're going to know the inner workings of her finances, though. Am I right, Ben?
Yeah, I would say, to me, the biggest thing is, I'm going to ask you a lot of, personal financial questions. I have to get the whole picture, and that's, part of what we do, and there's obviously no judgment when we ask those questions. We're here to figure out how we can help. But as long as you don't mind him knowing all that stuff, I have no problem with him coming in. I think it's nice to have somebody else that can ask questions, that has a different view of things, that might say, hey, I am, and my team, everybody on my team, we have no problem being questioned. I think it's very important that whoever you work with is comfortable with, questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you making that recommendation versus this recommendation? I like it when people ask me questions because they're taking more ownership. You don't have to, don't worry, but I like it when people do. And so when you bring somebody else along, that helps the process. And I think if that makes you feel more comfortable, wonderful. If that makes him able to learn more about finances and why we make the recommendations we do, and if that means that he has some questions about what he can do, happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like, Bill Belichick at a press conference asks questions when he answers the questions, or it gets he's not happy with questions a lot of times.
I can't wait for the time when I'm able to stop wearing suits and I can wear my cutoff hoodie sweatshirts. I think that at that point when I get to be in meetings that way, that's when I've made it. And by the way, thank you, Bill, for all that you've done. Yes, I am not a New England Patriot fan.
We know that.
But I can still appreciate. I can appreciate the body of work.
All right, let's get to Curtis in Canton. This is an interesting question because we talked about this in the last segment. My mother has long-term care insurance for years, and they're gone up again. The premiums yet again, in all caps. They say she has two options: cancel it, take less coverage is the second option. She's 70. For crying out loud, what can she do? We could spend the rest of the show on this one.
Yeah. So this is like painful because it's not like, hey, I've been paying on this policy forever. I can't afford as much as I used to. Can I lower my payment? Nope, absolutely not. You can't do it. It doesn't work the other way for the consumer. And so the idea that these massive insurance companies like GE Life, Genworth, and MetLife that issued these policies are now saying, oh, well, it's more expensive than we thought it was. We're just going to charge you more. Hey, that's on you. But it's difficult. So it's frustrating. I get frustrated with you. And a couple things. I would love to be an insurance company, give you long-term care insurance from the time that you're 50 to the time you're 70, collect that premium for 20 years, and then have you cancel it. That sounds great to me. I'm not going to have to, worry about having to pay out on your policy that you've been paying into. Crazy. My advice, barring a significant change in her goals, is to stay the course. Things have gone up. Taxes have gone up. My insurance has gone up in my house every year. The taxes on my car have gone up, right? Unfortunately, that's the environment that we're living in. And to be fair, long-term care costs and needs have gone up so significantly that it would be hard for any insurance company to be able to calculate correctly and still stay in business. And that is the excuse that they give for allowing them to raise these rates. Don't cancel it. Barring anything crazy, don't cancel it. It's frustrating. It's awful. But the idea of getting a new policy that will do the exact same thing would likely be, in most situations, way, way, way higher than it would be for her to keep what she has.
All right, final question. Alan and Avon, I hear talk about annuities, but my current advisor is not about annuities at all. Why the contradiction? Oh, the annuity question, Ben. How much time do we have? Not a lot, unfortunately, right?
I feel like I've gone on a few monologues over this last hour. But listen, I'm not all in on annuities. I'm not all out on annuities. I simply don't like death benefits. And, on a recent show that I did on NBC, I talked about why it's important that we continue to stay curious. I don't want a doctor that learned everything 40 years ago and doesn't stay up to date on modern medicine. Right? You don't want the same thing with your financial advisor. You want people who are continued to be open to new options, see the benefits, or can tell you why they don't make sense. All the life insurance stuff that was so popular 3 years ago, even though I didn't do it and did not recommend it, I still wanted to learn about it and understand why they liked it and how it made sense so that I could then poke holes in it from a professional standpoint and say these are the reasons, not just because. So annuities can do a lot of things, but they are not the right answer for everybody, but that also doesn't make them the wrong answer. It is totally situation based. I had a client come in recently and said, I hate the fact that I have to take money out of my IRA and then I put that into a CD and then that CD has to pay interest on it again, so I get taxed again that way. And so in their scenario, we're going to put a lot of that CD money into after-tax annuities that are just going to give them 5% a year or 5.5%, depending on what we end up, locking in. Sometimes 6 if we really want to do it for 10 years, but rates change all the time. But the point is that in that scenario, he's not going to be taxed on that interest until he takes it out when he needs it. So, for him, that annuity is just a tax deferral. Anybody that that has a pension, they're getting income for life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that you can do with annuities, but again, getting that income for life and having the whole thing disappear when somebody dies doesn't make sense for somebody that wants to leave a legacy. So
Sure.
There's good and there's bad and there's right and there's wrong, but it depends on what you want. And I think as long as you're comfortable with what you have, that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ben, final thoughts. We have a few, half a minute left or so.
Oh, yeah. This is why we have our How to Retire Blueprint. To go through all these questions, there's a lot of confusing things out there. We're here to help you figure it all out. But we can't do any of that until you give us a call. So please pick up the phone, schedule an appointment with my team, and let's see what we can do to help you live your best retirement.
Yeah, great advice, Ben. Here's that number before we go, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. Your chance to benefit from the How to Retire Blueprint. Still have a limited number of availabilities on our calendar this week. And remember, the consultation is offered at no cost or no obligation. 800-380-8985. Do it right now while you're thinking about it. Wow, the show has flown right on by. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. We hope you found the information we presented helpful. Look forward to all of you being back next week. We'll have new topics, new questions right here on How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. Ben, I enjoyed it as always. Go enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Same to you.
Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, hereafter known as Foundations, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment, opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Any discussions of specific strategies are for informational purposes only and have been provided to help determine whether they may be appropriate for your specific situation. If applicable, the primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. Each individual investor situation is different, and ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Nothing herein constitutes a recommendation that any security, portfolio of securities, or investment strategy is suitable for any person. No legal or tax advice is provided. Please review your retirement, tax, and legacy planning strategies with a legal or tax professional before transacting or implementing any strategy discussed herein. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. This is not endorsed or affiliated with the Social Security Administration, any federal Medicare program, or any U.S. government agency. If applicable, we do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. All rights reserved.